when you're just on a court and you're actually just shooting a ball and you're just getting it in every single time, and you're with like loved ones or your brother or your sister or your friends, and you're just enjoying this beautiful game, that honestly is such a beautiful experience. I was in my basement, and I was shooting coke into my veins, and I was using needles that my mom would use for my cat, and I heard my mom like cry real quietly, but it was different to any other cry that I've ever heard, because normally people were like in my ear screaming, begging me to stop, but I wasn't listening to them, right? Because I was so numb. But for some reason, that soft whimper that I heard from my mom, that cry, that really faint cry, was something that kind of just like woke me up.
Let's go, Rush! Alright, so Nas, when did the passion for basketball begin?
I mean, as early as I can remember. I grew up in Japan. I was born and raised there. And I remember my oldest brother, Nima, would watch basketball. I'm the youngest of 3 boys. So whatever they did, I also just followed. And I guess the oldest was like, the ringleader. So ideally, whatever he did, we were doing. And so I would say my earliest memory of liking basketball and playing basketball was 3-4 years old. We had this little basketball rim in our driveway too that I remember playing on too. So if we weren't playing, we were watching it, and that was huge, because in Japan, anything like American or international was so exciting, and so NBA was huge for us.
So growing up, what was it about basketball that you loved so much?
I think for me, just the bond that it kind of created with me and my brothers. It was the one thing that we loved all as a unit. It was that and hip hop. You know what I'm saying? And I guess, back in the 90s, basketball and hip hop culture really went hand in hand too. For me, growing up and just being a part of what my brothers were doing was something that I really enjoyed.
What about your basketball career? How serious did you take it? Like, did you ever have dreams of wanting to be a professional?
Hell yeah, man. Who doesn't have hoop dreams, I really thought I could do something with basketball, funny enough. But, I think about it, especially now, and I'm like, my skill, no matter how good I thought I was nowhere close to actually getting far. But I really enjoyed the sport. And, I remember I'd wake up in the mornings, I would take the early bus to school, practice for an hour, do my classes, recess, play ball, go to class, lunch, play ball, go to class, after school, play ball. So it was like 6 hours of basketball a day.
How do you mix basketball with your barbershop lifestyle?
Well, I think there's a huge correlation between certain looks nowadays that people are getting at the barbershop. I think the NBA and American culture has been severely influencing a lot of, street culture and just fashion around the world. People back in the day would never really get fades here in Australia. It was never a thing. Being a barber and really being able to kind of open the doors to, taking on different styles and techniques and offering that at my barbershop has been something that I definitely think has proven to be a positive outlook or image. One of my favorite, haircuts to do is just like a standard skin fade with a dope lineup. You know what I mean? I think those are so clean, and that's definitely popularized from a lot of NBA players. I just love the fact that basketball has such an influence in this shop as well, both in an aesthetic, but also in conversation.
Okay, so take me back to the beginning of your addiction. Can you pinpoint how it started?
Yeah, ironically, remember I was telling you about how I used to go home after a full day of school and play basketball on the streets near my house. There was a neighborhood near one of the basketball courts I used to hang out with, where there were a couple kids that I guess weren't the biggest role models, and I'd always hoop with them, and so I started just to originally play basketball with them, and then we started to hang out outside of the court, and before you knew it, I started getting involved in stupid petty crime and just drugs, I guess, and I don't know why I took it so far when it came to the drugs, but I just had an addictive personality, or I was dealing with certain things that the drugs was somehow allowing me to cope with, and it ended up taking me down a really bad path where I kind of just pushed everybody away, lost a lot of stuff, and I lost a lot of people, and I guess one of the sad things as well, outside of the fact that, I was breaking everybody's heart, was that my love for basketball and my connection to basketball also disappeared too during that period.
So what were you addicted to exactly?
Well, it started off with just smoking weed with these kids, using it as a coping mechanism for so many other issues that I never got to deal with. But eventually the weed wasn't really helping with that. So started getting into, other drugs, and then opium and coke were the two things that really brought me down bad. I got to a point where I was actually shooting the coke because I couldn't fit much into my nose.
Damn, that's crazy, bro. So what did your addiction cost you?
Oh, man. I mean, I would definitely say my life. It definitely cost my life in every sense of the word, except for death. I mean, there was a period where I felt like I was dead. And the reason why I say that is because think about people in a coma. They're breathing, but they're not living. You get what I'm saying? And that's kind of me. I was in a drug-induced coma almost, where I was breathing through life, but I wasn't really living life. And that to me is death.
So during that time, what did you fear the most?
Damn, man. I don't even know if I feared anything. I don't even know if I knew anything. That's the crazy part. Like, I think about it, and I would do some of the craziest things that I just think about now, and I'm like, what? But that's because that wasn't me. You know what I'm saying? That was me on drugs. And I keep trying to tell people that. Like, there's you and then there's you on drugs. Not like that old school commercials. Like, this is you. This is your brain on drugs. But I'm really trying to say, like, who you are as a person as opposed to who you are under the influence of a substance are two polar opposites, right? I broke my arm last year. You saw me, right? When I broke my arm. And, like, I remember I got into the hospital that night, and the anesthetist was trying to pump me up with like endone and morphine, and I was like, hell no. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, bro, I can't. And he's like, your bone's sticking out of your body. And I was like, nah. So I instantly called my brother, and I'm like, I'm wailing on the phone, like, yo, Nima. And he's like, what's up? And I'm like, bro, I don't want them to drug me, bro. I don't want them to drug me. I don't want to go back, bro. And he's like, it's going to be okay. And I was like, straight up, like, just the thought of it right now is actually making my heart go like this, bro. I was genuinely scared, bro, that I was going to fall back into addiction. That was my number one fear, bro. It's funny you asked me, what was your fear then? I had no fear then, but now, 11 years after being sober, I've got such a fear to go back to that point where I'm sitting there in a hospital with my bones sticking out my body, bro. And I'm scared to go back onto the drugs. So I'm sitting there sober, feeling the pain. But the pain of a bone sticking out of my body, as bad as that was nowhere close to the pain that I felt and that I gave other people when I was on drugs. You get what I'm saying? It wasn't even close. That's where I have the fear now. It's the fear of where I was before. I don't want to ever go back there, bro.
Now, one thing with Nasir was his extra kindness. He was awarded by the entire school and staff as the most lovable student, the friendliest, and he was indeed he had an award, a certificate. What was exactly the name of it? But being as the most...
It was called the Spirit Award.
The Spirit Award. So that was one thing. His affection and friendliness was not conditioned upon anything, whether the guy is rich or poor or which country he is from. That was one thing. And I think to some extent it was what me and the mom taught them, that we are all human beings. We are all the citizens of the world. We are like, as he was telling, we are like different flowers of the same garden. Nobody is better than the others. It's like saying, for example, red rose is better than the white rose. No, they're all beautiful, they are all nice, and they have their own good quality. So this was one thing. Occasionally, of course, he was naughty, and I got angry with him, but immediately we became friends. And one thing I liked, they knew they cannot mess around with me, especially when he was young, because I would kick ass.
Yo, no, he wouldn't. Not even a bit. Look at this Teletubby over here, man.
No, joking.
So when you were addicted to drugs, when did the change come? What made you want to take control of yourself again?
I mean, there was this period where I almost OD'd one night, and I was in my basement, and I was shooting coke into my veins, and I was using needles that my mom would use for my cat. It's crazy when I talk about it, but she had diabetes, so my mom would just shoot insulin into her. So I was just trying to get high one night, and I just couldn't, because my nose was just so stuffed from all the coke that I've been doing, and I had no access to needles at that point because it was like 2 a.m. So my cat's needles were just chilling on my kitchen counter, and I just grabbed them and sitting there with a Xbox cable around my bicep, a spoon that my mom would have cereal with, just mixing up the coke water in a spoon, bro, and just grabbing insulin needles for my cat and just sucking out the coke water and just injecting myself. And the crazy thing is, you're supposed to take that like pockets of air out the needle, because you're not supposed to have air go into the veins, because if it goes into your brain, it could like cause some kind of damage. But for me, I was such a junkie, man, I couldn't even do that. I had to just preserve every drop, so I wasn't excreting any of the air pockets. So I'm just sitting there shooting. But I think the reason why I'm talking to you now and I'm able to function is because the needles were so small. They were for my cat. They weren't for a human necessarily. Yeah, man, I remember waking up the next evening almost, because I stayed up all night. I was buzzing. And I got quite aggressive, and I pushed my mom out the way trying to go outside the door when she was begging me not to go. And I heard my mom like cry real quietly. But it was different to any other cry that I've ever heard, because normally people were like in my ear screaming, begging me to stop. But I wasn't listening to them, right? Because I was so numb. But for some reason, that soft whimper that I heard from my mom, that cry, that really faint cry, was something that kind of just like woke me up. And I was too much of a coward to look back at my mom and face her. But I looked down at my arms, and I just could see the marks from the night before. And I looked up into the sky, and I remember it was a gross, gloomy afternoon in Vancouver, Canada. And I was just thinking, what the hell am I doing with myself? Checked myself into a rehab. And yeah, as soon as I made that change, bro, it's crazy. And I think this is one of the driving forces as to why I'm sober, is because my family was there with me the whole way. But when I wasn't helping myself, there was nothing they could do. But as soon as I took one step towards the betterment of my future, they literally lifted me on their shoulders.
I think the greatest gift that basketball offers is the sense of connection and community. And I think that ends up being like an anchor for mental health. When you have those authentic bonds, it gives you this grounding that's super powerful, And I think, for me, I've had the blessing of traveling to over 60 countries I've easily probably played basketball in at least 50 of them. And in every one of those instances, like, basketball has been the door for me to build lifelong friendships with people across the continents, Melbourne, having moved here in 2008, like, it was basketball that opened every single door. It's where I've built my closest friends in this country, So I think that's probably what I'd say in terms of the benefits it offers for one's mental health, is just that sense of feeling alive because you feel like you have a community around you and a sense of connection.
So facing an addiction every day is, a big time battle. How has basketball helped giving you a strong mindset?
It's crazy to think that I literally picked up my love for basketball where I left it, but now it's almost been heightened 10 times more because I'm older, I'm more mature, I understand the game. I don't look at it as just an athletic sport anymore. I look at it as a science. I look at it as a community. I look at it as like a beautiful benefit of what it can actually do to people. I look at it as a language. When you're just on a court and you're actually just shooting a ball and you're just getting it in every single time, and you're with like loved ones or your brother or your sister or your friends, and you're just enjoying this beautiful game, that honestly is such a beautiful experience. That also does feel like a beautiful high, at least in my eyes. And some of my best moments in life has been on a court playing with my loved ones.
What routine have you formed to create a healthy lifestyle?
I look at myself as like a tree trunk, right? Where the bottom of it is a spiritual base. The top part above that would be the mental base. The part above that is a physical base, and the part above that is the emotional base. But if one part of the tree is like rotting, then there's a high chance that the tree will tip over or end up breaking. So it's not about focusing on only one of those aspects in life. For me, it's like, how can I actually make sure every single part of that tree is healthy and growing and strong, right? Because in that way, the tree is going to be strong, and the winds and of life, when they're coming, they're trying to blow me down. I'm just going to be standing there and chilling no matter what. And then when the wind goes away, I'm still just chilling. But that's why I try to focus on how can I better myself spiritually in the mornings, emotionally throughout the day, mentally throughout the day, and physically by taking care of my body, you know?
What's the biggest lesson that you've learned from everything that you've been through?
I know for a fact that I was at the lowest point, hurting so many people, and I was not the person that I'd ever be proud to say I was. But that's not who I am anymore. So if we look at people based on how they are and not what they can be, you know what I mean? It's going to affect us a lot, and it's not going to give the opportunity for people to have that second opportunity like I had. And I think another thing that I really want to touch base on is this concept that we're having nowadays, especially on social media, and it's just like a hot topic where it's like protect your energy or forget negative people and push people away, and it's everyone else's fault but mine. You know, I think those people especially need the attention and the love. The toxic people in your life or the negative people, those are the ones who are hurting. So don't push yourself away from them. How are they going to learn? If you can come at them with compassion and empathy, if you can try to inspire them through your actions, who knows whose life you can change? Do you know what I'm saying? Because if people left me in the dirt when I was going through my stuff, which a lot of them did, but I had those few core people who never gave up on me. And those few core people actually helped me bounce and rise up from the mud. You feel me? So I think that that's important. I think we all need to have a level of empathy and love and compassion to people. And that's something that I've learned throughout this journey. And if people can't give that to other people, at least I can do my best to give it to every single person.
All right, so final question. Can you share your biggest dream with me?
Straight up, it was to be in a documentary with you, bro.